Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's virtual Lunch and Learn as part of the WayUp Summer Series. I am so excited to be welcoming Gerri Martin-Flickinger. She is a force to be reckoned with and the CTO of Starbucks, which I had to do it. I had to be drinking this. I mean, I drink Starbucks coffee every morning, but it's 3 p.m. Eastern where I am, and I'm all about this matcha lemonade right now. And of course, I ordered it with the app, and we're going to be talking about how, like, she runs an entire organization that built a product that literally probably almost everyone on this call uses regularly. So, Gerri, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
I'm really happy to be here, Liz. And by the way, good job, Washington State, University of W. Yep.
Amazing. All right. So I have so many questions for you. I mean, you literally built a product, or your team and you built a product that I use every single day. And I want to hear all about what it's like to be in your shoes. I know we have a lot of people who are joining who want to be the CTO of maybe Starbucks and they're going to come after your job one day. And so I'm going to ask you all about that. But let's just start off with like who you were in college. Can you tell me a little bit about Gerri in college?
You bet. The word that comes to my mind first is nerd. I was a huge nerd in college. So to tell you how big a nerd I loved the football games. And I loved football games on campus because I did not go to the football games. I went to the library because my favorite seat in the library was always empty during football games. So I would sit in the library studying,
amazing.
Hearing the football game in the background, and I'm loving every minute of it. But I was also really active in college. I was on the synchronized swim team, which was at that time not like it is now. Synchronized swim was not an Olympic sport, so it was more an intramural fun activity. I did teach while I was an undergrad. I taught assembler programming, which I don't even think is taught anymore. But it was a lot of fun. And so that's where I kind of started my love of talking about technology and getting other people excited about technology, which really has become part of the core of who I am as an adult.
Amazing. And when you meet college students today, is there something that you say, this is what I wish I knew before I graduated, maybe something you would have done differently or something you would have been more relaxed about, anything like that?
Well, you know, I don't know if there's anything I wish I had known. I will tell you one of the things I learned that is a good thing to reflect upon. You really do learn a lot in college, and your degree is incredibly important. But what you might even be learning more about is people. And you may be learning more about how do I satisfy my professor? How do I make sure I'm delivering a product to my professor that he or she is excited about? And that has so many corollaries to the work world. You know, at some point, you're going to be in a structure where you work for someone. You're not in charge. You're not a freewheel. And you have to learn how to listen very carefully, listen to what is the assignment, so to speak, and deliver on that. And so I actually think some of that education best practices that you're all learning are going to pay off really dividends when you get into the workplace. What might surprise you, though, is it might not be exactly what you learned in class that you use in that first job. You might find you have to learn a whole new set of skills. And so don't be at all surprised if that first job you land, you use all your soft experiences from university, but you actually find yourself learning some new hard tech or science skills on top of it.
Awesome. So speaking of first jobs, I'm curious, I mean, you've run massive organizations at Starbucks, at Adobe, at Verisign, at Chevron. And so you've had a lot of people, you know, be in your organization from the entry level all the way to the senior level. And so when you think about interns and recent graduates who've worked in your organizations, who've really stood out, what would you say makes an intern stand out so much, or a recent grad stand out so much that it even catches your attention despite you having a massive organization under you?
Yeah, well, I think it's some of the same things that catch my attention, even if you're not an intern. The first is you really need to do what you love. And that shows on your face, that shows in your body language, and it shows in your excitement about the work. I can have a very smart person telling me about a project, but if they don't really love it, it doesn't really stick. So I'd say first, make sure you're doing what you love and let that shine, let that show through. The second is communications matters. And this is something that I've really seen over the last 10 years or so, that as interns come through, their ability to communicate has increased tenfold easily. And so that ability to get in front of the room to do your presentation, whether it's your capstone presentation or, you know, your end of season intern presentation, being able to tell the story, being able to have very few visuals with few words on them, but really paint a picture. I think for me, those two things are what stands out. Of course, there's always the gee whiz technical stuff, the what did you actually build or write that's cool. But in many ways, we serve those projects up to interns. And so it's really more about how do you take that and make that into something.
That's a great point. So you said you want to see, you know, passion and that it should show. And clearly it's just speaking to you for the last 9 minutes. It's radiant and showing on your face. But a lot of people tuning in probably can relate to the challenge that I think a lot of engineering students have around, I have no idea which path I'm going to be most passionate about. Is it product? Is it engineering? If it's engineering, is it IT? Is it DevOps? Is it front end, back end? You know, whatever it might be. So what advice do you have for the students watching who don't really know if they want to go the product route, the engineering route, or even which path within engineering or product?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question, and one that I get a lot from early in career professionals. I'll tell you what path I took and why it gave me a lot of value in my growth in my career. I actually started off as a hardcore engineer. When I was in college, I had an emphasis in artificial intelligence. So when I got out of school, I worked for Chevron Oil and put all of that technology to use there. What was good, though, about starting off in a fairly pure engineering role is that I learned a lot. And I learned a lot about what it feels like to build product, to deliver a technology software solution, to be on call in the middle of the night, to get up in the middle of the night and go somewhere and try to fix something, to bring users of a system online and get them trained and excited and engaged with the solution. There's a lot to learn about what it means after you write a piece of code and it goes out into the wild. And it's very different than project management. It's very different than senior management. So I encourage everybody who thinks they want a career in some kind of technology leadership role to at least spend some time being an engineer. It doesn't have to be your life ambition, but for me, I did it about, I don't know, 6 or 7 years in really hardcore engineering, and then kind of woke up one day and said, I actually want to lead a bigger team. I want to have a bigger influence on the strategy. And so I shifted at that point and started sort of growing my management chops. At the whole time, knowing and understanding enough of the deep technology that I could have compassion when we had bugs. I could also be tough when I thought people weren't, you know, focused on all of the right things. So I was able to fall back on that knowledge set when I needed it, but at the same time, move past it, which I think if I was just to give one piece of career advice to anyone, my one piece of advice is every time you take on a new role, you have to give things up. You have to let go of some things. And some people use the word delegate. I don't use that word actually. I think you really, really have to give things up. So as an example, when I was an engineer, I ran all the code reviews because I was, you know, at least within that team, you know, considered a pretty solid engineer. So I, you know, saw every piece of code that the team produced. I did the final checkoff on it. And at the point when I became the leader of the group, I couldn't do that anymore. I still loved that stuff, but I had to let it go. And that's really hard. And here's the thing, you learn that lesson every job you get, every advancement you get, every company you move to. So I even every few months, I sit down and think to myself, is there something I need to be letting go right now so that I can do more for the organization or more for my team or more for the business in some way? So letting go is incredibly important in your growth. And so that would be my one piece of advice.
Awesome. You mentioned that you made a conscious decision that you wanted to go into management. And so can you talk a little bit about what you think those watching who don't know whether they want to be senior individual contributor engineers for their careers or maybe engineering managers, like what should they be thinking about and what skills should they be trying to get early on in their career, or should they not be worrying about it at all?
Well, I don't think people should overthink this. And I mean that sincerely. I think careers are not something that you plot out perfectly. I mean, I look back at my career and it is, you gave me a very beautiful introduction. And when you look back on it, you go, wow, this is like textbook, you know, college degree in computer science and mathematics, works for oil, goes up and up and up and up. I had no idea that was going to happen. Like I might have had dreams about all sorts of things, but I didn't sit down and say, okay, I'm going to do this for 5 years, and then I'm going to do that for 5 years, and then I'm going to do that for 10 years. Instead, as I would do a role with passion, loving every day of it, you sort of naturally get to a point where you outgrow it. You just get to the point where you're like, I'm not feeling as passionate about this every morning, or maybe I just know how to do it too well. It's just not hard anymore. I'm not facing enough difficult challenges. Or maybe I just want to try doing something bigger. I mean, you know, I feel confident that I'm ready for that next step. You need to let yourself determine how long and when. And by the way, it's okay if you decide you're not. There are times in your career where it's like, no, this is really good for a while. This is I'm contributing where I need to be and doing what I need to be doing. So I would say you sort of learn your own cadence of growth and exploring your own capabilities in career. For me, I will tell you the moment it clicked for me. My first click of moment of moving from individual contributor to a leader. And when I say lead, remember that first step is very small. I had 2 people reporting to me, you know, not 200, I had 2. And, but it's a big shift. And it happened for me because I recognized I wanted to stop being the person writing the code, and I wanted to start being the person plotting the strategy around how the things we were building would change the organization and change the business. So I shifted my headset to focus on developing a 5-year strategic plan around how technology would change a portion of Chevron's business. And that for me became a huge building block for the rest of my entire career, because I learned that I really love looking out into the future. I love building strategy. I love thinking about how tech can fundamentally change the way we do work and the way society interacts. So that was for me that first moment. And then I can kind of look through my career, and there was one of those moments at every step along the way.
Awesome. I am curious, like you now are at Starbucks. You've worked at companies that historically are thought of as totally tech companies, like an Adobe or a Verisign. And then a Starbucks, the average person is going to think of them as a food and beverage company and not really recognize, even though they use the app every day. So how did you land at Starbucks? Well,
Yeah.
You're getting a lot of questions about this, so I figured I'd ask.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and you know what? I've got my phone right here. I'm betting everybody on this call has their phone nearby, and that's one reason I ended up at Starbucks. Let me tell a little story. I sort of gave a shout out to the University of Washington. I'm actually not from University of Washington. I'm from Washington State University. Go Cougs. And I had moved away to California for 32 years. And when Howard Schultz and Kevin Johnson called me, it was really out of the blue. And they said, hey, we want to rethink tech a little bit at Starbucks. We know you're from Washington State. Would you ever consider moving home? And so to be honest, it was a little bit of, wow, I hadn't really thought about Starbucks. But the more I talked to both Kevin and Howard, I realized that they shared something very powerful that I believed in as well, which is that people are at the center of everything. Really, people are at the center of everything. You heard me say that part of what my first career move was about was wanting to make a difference strategically in how to think about technology and how it affected people and organizations. This idea that building great technology can actually make people interact better together. I'm going to use this moment right now as a great example. We are all quite comfortable having a Zoom conversation like this. You know, 10 years ago, not so much. 5 years ago, kind of iffy, but all of a sudden now we are connecting as humans using technology. Many of you probably are using the Starbucks app to order your coffee. And, you know, last week I gave a lovely gift card just as I was, you know, my husband and I, we were in the car and I'm just on my phone, and within 3 minutes, I've given a beautiful Starbucks gift card to a friend, and I was all on my phone. And so the technology at Starbucks is actually quite deep into everything we do. And it's a really key part of how we keep people connected, whether it's our customers to our baristas, whether it's people inside the company and how they connect and interact. technology at Starbucks, just to help folks think through how big is that. It's not just the app. It's also when you walk into a store and there's a point of sale. It's also the Wi-Fi in the stores. It's also how all the stores connect. It's also payroll for over 330,000 partners. It's running over 31,000 stores, all that are an endpoint on a worldwide network. There is a tremendous amount of technology involved in running a business the scale of Starbucks. Think about everything with a power plug and a chip. And in some way or another, that's something that my team has to deal with. So there's a lot of really exciting tech in a company like Starbucks. And probably one of the most interesting technical challenges when I came there that fascinated me was the fact that Starbucks tends to have many, many micro transactions, financial transactions, but they come very quickly, and there are a lot of them. If you think about Starbucks being pre-COVID, about a $26 billion a year company, $5 at a time. Like, that's mind-boggling. And pre-COVID, a lot of that traffic came in the morning commute hours. So you have this tremendous spike in what you have to do for responsiveness. And for those of you who've used the app for more than, say, 4 or 5 years, you've probably experienced some of those shifts. Hopefully it works much better today than maybe 4 years ago.
I love it. It's one of the only apps that, I'm really not trying to do a commercial here, but it is one of the only apps that it always works exactly as I want it to work. So that's great. And I like that story of how you ended up there. It's always cool to hear about companies that you think of in one way, and then you learn about the people who work there and you realize there's so much more behind it. That's great. And by the way, just to everyone watching, we're going to drop a link in the chat soon for if you are a tech student and you want to, or tech recent grad and you want to apply for a job at Starbucks. We are putting together a list for that team of a resume book of everyone who's interested. So please do. We'll send you the link shortly in the chat. The last question I have, and then we've gotten dozens already of amazing questions from everyone watching, so I'll switch over to them. But we have a lot of women who are watching, who are engineers, and are typically outnumbered by men in the room. And so I'm just curious if there's typically, advice you have for female engineers as it pertains specifically to, women who might be the only one in their classroom, anything like that you think?
Yeah, I get asked this question a lot. And here's a couple of thoughts that I find myself reflecting on. One is diversity and inclusion extends to many, many styles, types, genders, nationalities, backgrounds. I mean, when you really want to be inclusive, it's not about men versus women. It's not about race. It's about including everyone and hearing every voice. So my first kind of reaction when I hear those questions is, instead of thinking about, as a woman, how to get ahead, it may be more about, how do we make sure that all the skill sets in the room and all the talent is given an opportunity to succeed and shine and grow in the way that they can contribute. So as leaders, or even as new employees in the workforce, I encourage all of you to not think about I'm this and they're that, or them and us, or any of those kinds of beliefs. Focus instead on, we're all different. Every one of us is different. Liz, you and I are different. I don't know you very well, but my guess is we have a lot of things that are different about us, and we see the world probably in different ways. Try to be inclusive to all of those perspectives. So that's one thought that I would leave with you. The other thought I would leave with you is, there are some stylistic things that are different about different people. And broadly speaking, there are some stylistic things that we often see between men and women that tend to be stylistically different. One of them that I always encourage females who ask to be mentored by me to think about is, how do you show up with your ideas? How do you share your ideas? And how do you lean forward in communicating your ideas? Because I think many times, for whatever reason, I often see female engineers sort of being quieter in the room and not always being quite as vocal or outspoken. But other than that, I really think it's about complete inclusion all the way around the table. And, men and women is just one of the many diversities that we're dealing with right now.
Awesome. All right, we're going to go to the questions from everyone watching, so please keep them coming. You can just press the Q&A button. We've gotten a lot of really good ones, so this is making it hard for me to choose. But I'm going to start off with Ya from UNCC, and Ya wants to know, are there any new technology features Starbucks is working on that you can talk about?
Yeah, there are a couple. So I think COVID, one of the things that's a blessing for us is this caused us to sit down and figure out what can we do quickly that would be new, different, and help everybody during COVID. And one of those things is curbside. We have introduced in a small set of stores across the US curbside, and it's completely integrated into the app. So you, when you place your order on MOP, if it's a curbside store, you get an extra prompt that says, do you want to do curbside pickup? You push the button, and when you show up at the store,
Wow.
the barista will bring the coffee out to you or your order out to you. So that's an example of something new that we're testing right now in a few stores, and it's completely enabled by tech, and that's really exciting. The tech team built the kind of platform that we could evolve really within 30 days of deciding to do the work. And that's exciting. Another tech innovation that we're doing right now that will be something that you will see pick up more momentum in FY21 or 2021 is expanding our mobile order and pay footprint to include more licensed Starbucks stores. So let me explain what that means. Many of our Starbucks stores in the United States are company owned, meaning the baristas in the stores are employees. We call them partners of Starbucks. But we also have many stores that are licensed. So for example, if you go into a Target or maybe your local grocery store or you're in an airport, those stores are run by licensees. And we've not had integration technically between most of those licensees and corporate. We are just now changing that. And so over the next many months, you will start seeing more and more stores available to you to do mobile order and pay. And we are fully integrating the tech stacks to licensees. So that's very exciting, heavy, heavy tech work, but super thrilling to see it come to life.
I can't imagine the system integrations you guys must be working on for that. So that's awesome. Okay, so we have several people on, which it's not that much of a surprise. Several people on are Starbucks baristas during the school year. And so I'll call out one of them because many of them have a similar type of question, but one, Nicholas, who is currently an intern at Cisco Meraki, and wants to know what's the best way for retail partners to break into the corporate operations at Starbucks?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question, and I hope you're an SCAP scholar, so I'll just leave that plug too. Well, we actually do internships every year, and we have been very, very happy and thrilled the number of baristas that have come in to those internships for us. We have a very rich education program with Arizona State University. And we actually have an intern center right at the campus for Starbucks. And so that's been a really fun way. We also have some time-limited assignments in corporate, specifically designed for our store baristas who, or store managers who want the opportunity to come and work at corporate. We have suspended those at the moment just because we aren't all at corporate right now. We're all working remote, but those will start up again very soon. So I hope to see you and hear from you.
Amazing. Okay, so going back to more of the engineering and product career advice, someone who, Bill, who's a student at George Mason University, wants to know, what advice do you have for people who want to go into like a product management type of role or career? Any book recommendations you have or anything like that? Because I know a lot of universities don't necessarily have too many product management courses.
I have to think if there's any books I think are great. I give the same advice to product managers that I sort of shared earlier in my comments about where to start your career if you want to go into management or IT or business or whatever. I do think the best product managers I've seen have some kind of experience building product before they try to manage the life cycle of a product. Product management in its purest sense is about understanding what the market wants from a product and understanding how to build a product delivery roadmap that will get you there. I mean, that's the best product managers. They have an eye to the outside and they have this way of really comprehending the capabilities of the actual product engineering teams. I mean, of course, there's a whole go-to-market aspect of that too, but just putting that aside for a moment, you kind of have to be able to do both those things. And so even for people who want to go into a product management career like Bill, I think it would be great to make sure that you spend a bit of time, maybe your first couple of years, making sure you're in an actual engineering delivery team so that you can understand what does it mean to build a product. What is the complexity of integrating products together? How hard is it to keep a product current with enhancements or changes or security patches? Like living some of that will make you a better product manager.
Awesome. Okay, so Salvador, who's a student at UC Irvine, wants to know, do you think going to grad school and getting a master's degree in computer science or software engineering will be helpful? And why should someone maybe go that route versus not, versus, you know, just sticking to work?
Thanks, Salvador. That's a kind of a personal question for each of you. So let me tell you kind of the things I would think about if I was weighing undergrad only or grad school. I think grad school lets you go much, much deeper in an emphasis area. And if your ambition is to get into a very pure domain where you want to be on the leading edge of a technology evolution, it's probably very helpful. So for example, if you want to become an AI researcher, I would definitely encourage grad school. If you want to become a product manager, like Bill, nah, I'm not so sure unless you're going to take graduate courses in a specific product area that you think is going to apply to you. So it depends a lot on if your career interest and what excites you is something that's going to go very deep in a domain and you're really clear that that's the domain you want to stick with, you know, or if you're going to be a little bit more of a generalist who can see yourself moving, you know, maybe taking that skill like product management and moving between different product lines or even different companies that solve very different things. So it a lot has, I would say that the real question is, what do you want to do? What are you passionate about? And those pure science plays are where I think that the graduate degrees really pay off. Also, don't forget, you can always go back to grad school later. There are a lot of universities who actually really like seeing their graduate students having had a little bit of time out in the work world, because it helps them get more settled into like, what am I really interested in and what big questions do I want to ask? Because you really, in your thesis, really need to think about, you know, what is the big thing? What is the big think you want to have? Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. And by the way, to everyone watching, there's so many of you who are writing that you are baristas at Starbucks and love your experience. So Gerri, whatever Starbucks is doing for your baristas is clearly working very well, because we have a lot of very happy fans who are also employees. Okay, so I'm going to do a fun one really quickly. Not that they're not all fun, but a side one, and then we'll go back to career advice. Hari, who's an intern at T-Mobile, wants to know, what's your preferred Starbucks drink of choice?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I always said a latte, hot, boring, a grande, very boring. However, I have to tell you that the cloud caramel macchiato is amazing, but I can't handle the calories every day. So I'm afraid it's grande latte for me.
Love it. Awesome. Okay, so Aksha, and I'm so sorry if I mispronounced your name, but said, you mentioned that you decided one day that you wanted to be in a more of a leadership role after working in engineering for 7 years. What did you do to get to that leadership role? Was it having a conversation with your manager about promotions? Was it actively looking and applying at other companies? I think they just want to hear more details about that stuff.
Yeah, so it was staying in the same company. So I was at Chevron for 12 years. And I'd love to say a little bit more about that, because you're like, Chevron oil and computer science and how'd that all happen? And, you know, it kind of happened because honestly, you know, as I was coming out of college, I was thinking a lot about making a living. Like for me, my number one thing was I need to feed myself and house myself. And Chevron just offered me a really nice role in the domain I was interested in of AI. So that I landed at Chevron. What I didn't realize was how fortunate I was to have landed at Chevron. And here's what was very fortunate. First of all, it was a really big company. And some of you may be thinking you want to jump out of college and go right into a startup. And I'm not going to dissuade you from any dream you have, but I will tell you why landing in a really big company turned out to be a great thing for me. I ended up learning a lot about scale and why scale is hard and what about organizational management can be good and why having mentors that have been in the business world for 20 or 30 years can help a young talent grow. I probably have a lot more respect for those things because I learned them very early in my career. And even when you don't think you're learning things about scale, you are, right? Even if you're not going, even if you're not running an offshore platform project for 10 years, and I never did, and that wasn't part of my job, you're around people who are doing that. And it causes them to do things like have really great project management skills, and so you sort of learn to have really great project management skills. So I'm an advocate for if you can find the right kind of role and your passion's there, I think large companies are a wonderful first career step. And the people I have seen that ended up in startups, many of the most successful ones at some period in their career had some larger scale experience because then they can pick and choose what processes they like from that. So I wanted to just kind of give that color because when it came to that first time, I was there 12 years and I had many different roles while I was there and continued to grow. I didn't have to change companies to continue to grow. And that first time when I decided I needed to lead instead of just be an individual contributor, I had that conversation with my leader. And it was great because that leader said, okay, let's give you something bigger to work on. And I actually said what I wanted to work on. And they said, okay, then let's do that. And so be brave, use your voice, think carefully, changing jobs, changing companies, I should say, is a very, very big decision. And every time I see a resume where people are changing jobs every 2 to 3 years, and they've done that now for the last, 25 years, I'll be honest, I worry that they haven't fought through the really hard stuff. Because after you're in a company for a couple of years, you've probably done a bunch of things right, but you've probably made a few mistakes. Everyone does. And by sticking with it and learning through those and growing through those in the same company, you will become more adaptable and more resilient. If every time it gets hard, you just shift companies, you may not be learning everything you could be learning. So be prepared to learn through the hard stuff, and that's good. At the same time, there are points in your career where changing companies will give you that next leap of something new.
Awesome. I resonate so much with what you just said. That's fantastic. And as someone who, by the way, went right out of college to Google, a huge company, and then went and started a company, I couldn't agree more. I think working at a big company helped me learn a lot about what good and bad maybe looks like before starting. So that's great. Okay, so you talked at Chevron. You talked about how at Chevron there were huge projects going on, and sometimes maybe you were, working on something and you might have been like, okay, I have to learn on the job right now. So Shell Fun wants to know, how have you handled imposter syndrome if you've ever experienced that before?
How have I handled what? Imposter syndrome?
Imposter syndrome, where you're kind of standing there and you're like, okay, why are they letting me control an app that literally probably tens of millions of people around the world or maybe even more are using every day? Like, do you ever feel that way? And totally fine if not.
Well, I'm not sure. I do think there is always this fear factor. And I think anyone who is in a senior role who says there aren't moments when they're a little afraid would probably not be genuine. I think there's moments you're afraid. I think there are moments where you feel incredibly accountable. I'll give an example. You all have been talking about how great the mobile app is. What if it goes down? What if it breaks? What if we break it tonight? Like, what if I go to bed tonight and I wake up in the morning and there's no MOP? Like, yeah, of course, we all have those moments of maybe self-doubt or worry or can I really do this? But you know what? You have to just have confidence in your capabilities. And then when bad things happen, you can't let it crumble you. You have to rise above it. You have to problem solve through it. There's an interesting thing about resilience too. I heard someone say something like, you really need to know your own capabilities, and then you need to find ways to pace yourself. So I do think there are times in your career where you're going to take a big leap, But I would suggest when you take those big leaps, make sure that you feel confident in your capabilities. Because trust me, even if you're really confident, that big leap, you're going to find out something you might not have known or you need to learn. But if you try to leap too far over your skis, you might not be able to recover from that. So I think the trick about taking big roles is you really do have to really mentally in your own self feel confident that you can do it. If you don't, it might not be right time yet. It might not be the right opportunity for you. So it's a lot about how you are self-assessing your capabilities. And you know, pace yourself. You can grow every single day. Like I've had the same role here at Starbucks for 4.5 years. And I will tell you, I'm still learning things, you know, and every day I have to think about what do I need to learn and do differently. And it's not the same job as it was 4.5 years ago. And I'm not the same person I was 4.5 years ago. And that's okay.
Wow. Is there something in particular that maybe during this COVID period you've especially tried to learn or tried to get better at, or that you're now actively trying to improve on?
Many things. One that has been really interesting has been shifting how I collaborate with people. Clearly, I've always had a sort of a tech-centric way of doing video conferencing or doing, you know, remote collaboration. But because it's become 100% of that, and not having the opportunity to get people in a room and do planning around a whiteboard, I've really had to stretch myself in terms of how I think about collaborating. And it's one thing to have video meetings in formats like this where we're sort of having a conversation and it's pretty structured and in an hour it's over and people go back to their other things. It's very different if we were right now with 50 people trying to design the next generation MOP. You know, now you've got the problem of 50 people, all of who need a voice, all of who need to be able to write on the whiteboard. And that's very hard, especially thinking about the inclusion I mentioned earlier. Not everyone uses their voice the same way. You know, some people will be more vocal. Some people will write on that whiteboard really quickly and fill up the whole space. And I would say that ability to collaborate and innovate is harder in this construct with large teams. So I'm trying to learn how to do that better and find new ways to have shorter meetings. We've shortened our meetings, for example, where we used to have our meetings. We don't schedule anything longer than 50 minutes. I used to have a 2-day quarterly business review meeting with my vice presidents and above. We now do it in 3 hours, spread over 2 days so that nobody feels fatigued from looking at the screen. So really shifting how we think of engaging with each other.
Zoom fatigue is real. I hear that. Awesome. Okay, so someone who is anonymous submitted a question that I think is great, which is, what are some of the biggest challenges that specifically your industry is facing when it comes to developing technologies?
Let's see. You know, I would say if I think about Starbucks, one of the things that is hard is the scale. And I think it would apply to all, you know, restaurant, quick serve retail kinds of food and beverage models. You know, if you think about Starbucks, each store has roughly 20 to 30 partners in it. And each store runs like a mini business, right? They have inventory that comes in, they have sales that go out, they have to deal with, you know, customers. So you've got 30-some thousand of these small businesses. And making change happen with technology, that's a lot of points of presence you got to change. You know, if we say, hey, we want to put a new back office PC in all those stores, that's over 30,000 places we have to install it. And some of them are in far remote places. It's very different than saying, I have a cloud infrastructure and I'm just going to update the software and now everybody gets it. So it's scale and it's the complexity of many points of presence that is really difficult from a technology perspective. The other aspect is that these points of presence have to be able to continue to run as businesses even when the internet goes down, meaning when their network connections goes down, they can't stop running a store. And that makes it really hard. So all those wonderful cloud ideas you might have don't really work if you can't get to the cloud. And so building edge compute that works in these stores is another really interesting challenge and opportunity. And then as we are enabling more and more of the devices in the store to be IoT connected, which all of our new equipment in our stores is, again, what's going to happen when you're now not being able to talk to the network because the service provider in the area is down. And for those of us who live in big cities who have really great connectivity, we probably think, well, that never happens, but I would guarantee you it happens a lot across the country. And as individuals, you may not notice it, but on a corporate network, you really do see that. So I would say that's some of the stuff that's really hard. And I think everyone can sit down and we can envision a million wonderful technology things to do, but then you have to deal with the scale and how to make it uniform in a fairly short period of time.
Wow, that's wild. And there really are so few companies in the world that probably, with physical locations that probably have that kind of scale to think about. So I would imagine, are you friendly with some of the other CTOs at other companies that are maybe, that it must be really interesting talking to everyone and sharing best practices. Although I will say, and again, I promise I'm not biased. I really do feel this way. The technology that you guys have developed compared to any other retail experience technology is second to none. So
well, we have an amazing tech team. I can take no credit. It's all these amazing technologists we have. They're fabulous.
Awesome. Okay, this next question is from Marcos, and I think it's super thoughtful. So how do you ensure that the technology Starbucks uses and integrates into the user experience remains consistent with the company's mission of nurturing the human spirit? In other words, how do you uphold the company's brand identity with the complexity of the technology you use and expose your customers to?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for asking that question. So let me go back to something I said a little earlier. I had mentioned that part of what drew me to Starbucks was the human-centered mission of the company, which is to nurture and inspire the human spirit, one person, one cup of coffee, and one neighborhood at a time. So with that, every time we think about anything that expresses our brand, whether it's a digital expression or a physical expression or a store design, we actually come together at a senior level to make sure that we're not doing anything that violates that brand promise to our customers. So it is on the top of everything we do. We have our experienced design teams that work on the application, the app, and they review every single visual to ensure that it meets our brand expectations. So it's a tightly coupled team with marketing and our technologists.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to combine two people's questions because they're pretty similar. Sunita, who's a student at Columbia College and not only a fan of Starbucks, but also works at Starbucks, as well as Anna, who is a student at Kansas State University and an intern this summer at Chevron Aviation. Both were asking about how you've been developing technology, especially during the COVID time, to improve or help the working lives of your employees. So one of them had said, not only to keep them safe and healthy, but also just to make sure that their workload does not dramatically increase in a time where you can't have that many employees in a store at the same time and so on.
Yeah, so we've done a number of things to try to help our baristas in the store during COVID, including things like giving them some electronic incident report tools so that they don't have to get on the phone with people, streamlining some of the back of house activities they have to do so that they can have more time facing the customers. We've recently, another thing we've done is we've recently started deploying handheld POSs in some drive-throughs in the country so that we can help our baristas be out and with the customers to try to reduce some of the backup on the lines of cars in the drive-through lane. So we've been trying to do a number of things to help the baristas free up so that they can stay focused on the customer and not have to spend time doing manual activities as much as before.
Awesome. It really is crazy how you guys are touching every single part of the experience within Starbucks. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. So Morgan, who is a computer science student at Wichita State, wants to know, what small habit do you find to be the most important for optimal performance in your professional or personal life?
Can you ask the first part again, Liz?
Yeah, well, sorry, what small habit or, thing that you do helps you really optimize your performance?
Um,
Maybe it's something you do in the morning or exercise or anything like that.
You know what? I try really hard to stay grounded with my family. I have a husband who was my high school sweetheart. We've been married for many, many years. We have two wonderful daughters. And I just try really hard every day to make sure that there is a part of my attention that they are really getting. And so it really puts things in perspective a little bit for me every day. It's very easy, especially when your careers just get going, to get all wrapped up in that. Like 24/7, it's all about the career, it's all about the work. And I think making sure that every day you take a moment to step back and be grateful for maybe the things that are outside of your professional career, and just give yourself a moment to value that as well.
Awesome. I'm going to end with the final question. So, I mean, there's a lot more questions, but just for the sake of time. So a few people have basically said they want to be a CTO one day. And one of them said, like, I will be CTO of Starbucks one day. So we've got some aspiring CTOs, and they want to, more or less, I'm kind of combining a few here, but they want to just know, what do you think has helped you or other CTOs stand out to make it so that you've been able to get, basically acknowledged and chosen as or asked to be a CTO of a company versus, climbing the ladder but never making it all the way to the top?
Yeah, I think there's a few different things. I'll just close with a few thoughts, and some of them will resonate with comments I've made earlier. One is communication. I think anyone who aspires to be at a senior executive level in any role has to build some communication chops. And that, it doesn't mean you have to be able to sit down and write a book. It does mean that you need to be able to articulate a vision and help people understand how to get to it. And so much of that depends on how you tell the story. And so I would say communication is number one, and communication in order to paint a picture of the future, which is probably the second thing. In order to get to C-level positions, you can't just be able to execute the work. You have to be able to paint a strategic picture as well. Like, why does this work matter? What will this work look like in 5 to 10 years? What disruptors in the industry matter to us, and why? So that visionary strategic thinking is critical. You've got to be able to do that. And you won't be able to do that right out of college. I mean, at least I've never met anyone who can do that right out of college. So give yourself time to develop that ability to look to the future. Then the last couple of things I would say, one is about listening. Being in senior executive positions is as much about listening as it is talking. And it's probably more about listening. And that means understanding what you're hearing from your customers, understanding what you're hearing from your teams, understanding what you're hearing from your peers in the company, and really listening to seek to understand and then to help build a solution together. I think a lot of smart people can get very carried away with their ideas, and that becomes all that they talk about. So I think it's that listening and building together that becomes very important. And then I think the last thing that is important is to become an executive. You need to, through your career, show resiliency. And resiliency could look like moving from one industry to another. Resiliency could mean picking yourself up after a company fails, or having a big life event that kind of changes your trajectory for a while. Whatever it is, having resiliency and finding your way of pacing yourself and getting through those tough times is something that I would say helps build you for the future. So when you have a failure, embrace it, recognize it's happened, and learn from it and keep going. And that is what will help you get prepared for those larger and larger roles.
What a perfect note to end on. That's awesome. I love that advice. And to your point, it sounds like it's really true for no matter what career you want to go into, if you want to get into that executive position. So thank you so much, Gerri, again, for doing this. Based on the comments I'm seeing in the questions, and I'm sorry if we didn't get to everyone's questions, but based on the comments and questions, clearly a lot of people found this incredibly valuable. So thank you so, so much. To everyone watching, we sent over the link. We definitely recommend you submit your interest on that WayUp page for Starbucks so that we can make sure that the team over there gets gets all of your information. And I'm seeing comments, yes, one of the best talks. So thank you again, Gerri, so much. I really appreciate it. If people want to follow you, is there like Twitter? Are you, or on any of the social networks so that I can continue to hear from you?
I'm on LinkedIn. You can follow me there.
Awesome. All right. So go over to LinkedIn and find her there. So thank you so much again, Gerri.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Liz. Have a great day.
Take care, everyone.